Well, we got a broken choke plate on this carburetor, but I wanted to show you a couple of things that makes this process possible, but also very difficult. And while we're at it, we need to go ahead and change the spring on this air valve secondary. Let's get started. This carburetor was damaged when the choke retaining clip busted off and they didn't have any way to fix it. Now, you can replace these. We're going to talk about the hardware because that's where you get into a little bit of situation, but Edelbrock doesn't sell these choke plates as a replacement. You just have to scavenge it. I stole this one off another parts carburetor. You can see the clip on there that broke off, or maybe it was purposely broken off. I'm not sure. I've already went ahead and removed it, but we'll start on the secondary side on the AVS, and then we'll reassemble the choke plate and assembly. But the problem is the same on both sides, and I'll show you that right now. Here's where we run into all the problems. Now, I removed the factory choke plate earlier. The problem is because of the way this hardware is designed, it's really one way in and no way out. The hardware does snap fairly frequently. I was able to extract those out there so you can take a look at it. Here's a brand new one that I have. Again, well, I say brand new. It's worn, it's used, but the hardware came out of this one much easier. The problem with the hardware is, one, it's very, very small. I believe if you were looking for the closest size, that is a 4-40. So it's a very, very small piece of hardware. You can kind of see here in these close-up images. But when you look at the two, when you compare the two side by side, the Edelbrock hardware has a small amount to guide in there, and then the hardware is what we call staked, meaning it's got a little bit of a rough edge on there. It's designed to go in, but as soon as you start to extract it, you're going to run into a situation where it's very, very easy for it to snap off and break. It's designed really to go one way in and no way out. But that's a good thing. You don't want hardware coming loose inside throttle plates, inside the choke plate in the AVS. All of those things are super critical. It's one of the knocks I have on all the Chinese knockoff stuff is they haven't figured this out yet for whatever reason. But that hardware is very specialized. Now, Edelbrock does not sell any of this stuff separately. So here's where you run into some problems of trying to do this on your own. Now, I've got a little bit of this hardware that I have new. Edelbrock was kind enough to give me some of that in years past, so I've hung on to it. As I've needed to replace choke plates, but I will tell you that in every instance, I don't remove throttle plates, I don't remove choke plates, or the AVS air valve ever for this reason, because you will, the chances of you damaging it are great. Now, this carburetor happens to be damaged already. Choke plate was busted, and then now during the inspection, I found out that the spring for the AVS is busted. So we're going to try to replace both of them, see how if we can reuse the shafts or if that becomes a problem, and we'll kind of go from there. But the hardware is the key here, and it makes this extremely difficult to try to do this on your own. Can it be done? Yes. Is it risky? Yes. Is there potential for failure? That's also a yes. So let's go ahead and extract out the AVS air valve secondary, and I'll show you, and hopefully we won't run into an issue where the hardware breaks on us. The first challenge we have here is the hardware is so small that the wrenches are small, so you have to be a little careful on these ones that are a little bit bigger on the secondary side on the AVS plate. I'm using a 4.5 millimeter. It fits the best, and I've had the most luck with it. They're not perfect. Anytime you get hardware that small, it's a little difficult. So hopefully these will come out of here without giving us too big of an issue. Now, this one seems to have broken free, but we've also getting into that spot where it is very easy for it to snap. It just really tightened up there. So hopefully, since we're most of the way out here, it's not going to cause us an issue binding a little bit. So we've made it past the difficult stretch. But you can see, and I'll show you on a close-up here, the hardware is kind of jacked up. Now, we might be able to reuse this, but again, it's very temperamental, so I'll show you that going back together. But let's see if we can get the other side out here and wish for some good luck. Okay, now that I know this one's broken free and it's moving and we've got a good chance of it, we need to release the tension on the spring. So let's go ahead and unlock that. And that is a T15. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and let this unwind. And we're going to release all that tension off there. So it's in there on its own. So no tension at all. So, okay. We are in good shape. And there's no reason to take all the hardware completely out. We'll do that here in just a minute. So, okay. And let's finish getting this plate out of here. Okay. And there we go. There is the plate. Now that we have all that released, we can just slide that out. And out comes the spring. And I'm just going to leave that there for right now. So anyway, the problem with the spring is this inner one, I'll show you that here in just a second, wasn't connected. I see that the spring is probably fine. I've got other ones, so I'm just going to go ahead and replace this one because it popped out of there once. It could be from the over tightening of it and not adjusting that and being a little more temperamental with it. I'm also going to replace this rod and put a new one in there just in case that was slightly bent. I do have a new one to throw in there. So let's do that. Let me get this cleaned up a little bit because it's a little filthy, and then I'll show you a couple other little details here. Hopefully you can see that okay, but that little pinhole right there is where the spring, let me get some light on it, maybe that'll help. Yeah, that is where the spring goes through there. So need to just quickly inspect it, just make sure there's no damage through it. Didn't get, that was the cause of it. I think what happened is I just over tightened it and pulled the spring out of there, but you can clearly see the hole goes all the way through. So that's what we need to do, is we're going to line up that spring on there. So let me get another spring out, and then we'll start to assemble this. I'll show you how it all goes together, and then we'll talk about the hardware going back in. Let's get a new spring out here. That one looks a little bit nicer. All we're going to do is go back in the reverse order, but there's a couple little details here. So on the passenger side of the carburetor, there's a little washer that rides on the shaft that you'll need to make sure you've got on there. So doesn't matter how you want to do it, as long as it's on there, because that washer is going to ride up against there. It's to help you keep the choke plate from binding. You can certainly go down the Loctite path if you'd like to, if it makes you feel better. But honestly, because that hardware is, like I said, staked, it will hold itself. Now, this is very delicate. That hardware does not do very well with being tightened down. You have to be extremely careful, and your chances of screwing it up are extremely high. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this thing back together. Remember, we've got to line up that spring to make sure that it goes in that hole. Okay, there's the hole that it goes into. So now we know we're good there. We're completely slid over. Let me get this over here to make sure we get lined up. Now, all you're doing at this point is getting that plate put back on there, and got to watch that spring, okay? And see where that lines up on there, or that wear marks on there. It's always helpful to take pictures beforehand if you need to. If you need to flip this over, take some video pictures, whatever it is, you can make sure that you get this on correctly, because you definitely don't want to be taking it back off here. So all we're going to do is rotate that spring around up against the plate. And then the easy thing to do is take a pick and just move these around. Okay? That way you can start to line up your holes. Make sure this is off there so you're not binding up the spring like I am right now. Okay, we're good. And you can hear it kind of just drop into place. So the spring is on there and tensioned. It's in here. Now all I gotta do is just slowly start feeding this hardware in here. The first couple of turns is not the issue. You should be able to get this started fairly easily. The problem is when you get further down is where it becomes an issue. You can twist these heads off of here very, very easily. So all we're going to do is we're just going to get these run down enough so everything stays together and no issues. So once I get that one started, I like to just go ahead and get the other side. Again, nothing gets forced here. Very, very delicate. This one started a lot easier. But now that we've got it all situated, it becomes very easy. Remember, there's no tension on our spring right now, so we're good to go. So let me run this down, and then once we get a little closer to making contact, we'll come right back. At this point, we just have that hardware snug down just a little bit. You can still move that plate back there a little bit, but now what you really need to do is concentrate that the plate operates, it doesn't bind up on any of these corners. You've got enough wiggle room on that plate that you can get that in there cockeyed. That washer that we put in there helps that. Certainly all these little little details of these little corners and edges that can catch on, that's the key thing. So what I like to do here is while that plate is still a little loose, let's go ahead and put some tension on here, and then we're going to lock that down. So let's go ahead and put some tension on this spring, and then that way, once we get some tension on and we lock it down, we can check to make sure that we're operating correctly. See how we're a little hung up? So, all right, we're locked down. Remember, we're not elephant man tight here. We're just trying to make sure that that operates. Now, that's pretty tight, but what I am noticing is that it is operating where it needs to. You can kind of see some marks there because that plate will come in contact with the back part of the air horn assembly. Just trying to make sure that we're not bound up here on any of these corners. Operates easy, doesn't interfere with the choke linkage that we just installed a minute ago. Just trying to make sure this is right, because I'm here to tell you that hardware is not forgiving. It is very easy for it to snap the heads off of it. So let's just hope and pray that we got it right. Now, looks all good to me. Just going to take really, really small little bites at this to tighten this down. And you'll know, keep checking it, you'll know, you'll feel it kind of bottom out. And I'm here to tell you, these are both tight, and I'm not going a quarter turn or an eighth turn or anything. That's all you need to do. It doesn't need to be any more snug than that. Okay? And then we can verify that this is all good. We just released all the tension on it. All that works. So that is essentially how we're going to set this in the rear. So that's the spring, moving that back and forth as I let go of the screwdriver. We know we're good to go. So just snug this down, make sure we're operating, and that's the flap replaced. New spring, one piece of new hardware. I did reuse that one. Washers in there. Our choke rod plate is changed, so we know we're good to go. Very, very delicate process here. It's not the easiest thing in the world. So again, when I tell you have to be very, very careful here, because I will tell you, I'm very surprised that I didn't twist the head off one of those. It's very easy to do. It's a very delicate operation. When they're going together at the factory, they're also very delicate as well too. But because it's all new shafts and everything's new, hardware's new, it does go together. But they are very, very delicate on the tool that puts that together, because they just can't run into a situation where the AVS doesn't work, the choke plate doesn't work, make sure it doesn't bind. It has to be all good to go. So let me get the front choke plate on, and we'll go from there. Choke side is just the same. We just have to make sure that this operates very smoothly, very freely before we tighten these down. Again, it's very, very delicate here. This one on this right side kind of was starting to feel a little funny, so won't surprise me if we snap this one off, but just, it's seated. Again, because the choke is a little more sloppy, there's not these tight areas that are going to catch on it. More airflow comes through here. It's not really a precise deal. You're just making sure that everything looks the way it should. Okay, now that side's fairly snug. This side, all right. Again, our plate's on there tight. You don't need to over tighten it. You don't need to snug it, make sure it's seated, and give it a little bit of twist. I'm not going to play with this. That is on there. It is operating. No problem. So, everything we needed that to be is good to go. Just remember that this is a very delicate operation. And if you get to this point here, you've accomplished a lot. Because I'm very surprised that we didn't at least twist off one of these on the way out and going back in. It is very, very easy to do so. So these are far more delicate than they appear to be. So don't be surprised if this happens. I don't offer this repair service anymore for that reason alone. I don't have a lot of these parts. I do occasionally have some of the hardware. So if you need any of that, drop me a message. Maybe I can help you out there. But yeah, it's just a very, very touchy situation. But this air horn assembly is not cheap. They're not easy to get a hold of. I have to buy a core, steal it off one to repair another one. So for me, taking the opportunity and hopefully getting it right was worth the risk. So now we've got a good air horn assembly that works. It's a little dirty, it's a little worn, but now it can go into the parts cleaner. We can hopefully build this 650 CFM carburetor and put it back to use. So if you got any questions on this one, don't hesitate. Please leave them down below. Try to answer any of them. If you're needing anything, you can drop it down below or go to my website, send me an email from there. We'll catch you guys on the next one. We'll see you.